Your sacrifice completes my sanctuary of 1,000 testicles.
Welcome to the Unrealistic Elephant Podcast. All right. Welcome to the newest episode of the Unrealistic Elephant Podcast. My name is Nathan.
And I am Ian.
We are on location for one of our few times that we record in person. We're sitting
Second time, actually.
Second time, yeah. Yeah.
Because I am in town for the holidays, and we are recording this between Christmas and New Year.
Which is a really weird time of year every year. It's like you never really know what to do with yourself, you know? Like once the Christmas is over, it's like, oh, well, now it's the New Year, but it's not the New Year. It's that weird week in between. I never know what to do with myself, so I just never get anything done.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah. It's nice to have you here, bud. Like we don't see each other enough. Probably because of the geological whole situation where you're on the other side of the country. But
to be fair, I come back like 3 times a year.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it could be.
We could be recording more in-person episodes, but we're too...
Well, it just never works out.
Yeah, we're too busy doing whatever we do whenever you get here.
Yeah, exactly.
You know how it is. But yeah, we are back in person for a brand new film discussion, and this is one I'm actually really excited about. I was excited about it when I recommended it last month, but I wasn't really ready for how much I wanted to talk about this movie after watching it again.
I was ready. I mean, I've only seen this movie once before, but I knew it was dense and packed, and it was going to lead to a lot of discussion. So
yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what I'm looking forward to. So, for those of you who didn't listen last month, our movie for this month is The Holy Mountain, directed by Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Jodorowsky, I believe.
Yeah.
As James Rolfe would call it, the Holy Mountain.
Mountain. Does he say that?
That's one thing on Cinemassacre Truth they make fun of him for, is his pronunciation of mountain.
Well, he's just got like
a mountain.
He's from New Jersey or whatever. Like, yeah. I never got that. I never got making fun of the man for pronouncing words funny. That's you just know that you're.
Oh, God. I mean, I just watched a video from fucking Daddy Derek today.
Yeah, exactly.
You're really reaching for James Rolfe saying Mountain.
Mountain.
If you watch Daddy Derek, it's every other word. So.
But
Justin Bieber.
Well, speaking of prolific auteurs in cinema, I don't know a whole lot about Jodorowsky as a filmmaker. I think it's kind of important to talk about him first before we get into the discussion, because from what I understand, he's like a very spiritual person. Like a lot of people will make these, like Holy Mountain right up front is an incredibly like religious and spiritual movie. But he himself seems just as dense and complex as any other, just as dense as complex as the film itself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would hope so, that the artist is as complex as the art that they make. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like some people very much want to come off as, you know, artistic and deep, but in reality, it's very much substance. It's very much like style and like artistic expression over like the substance of what's actually being said. That is not the case in this. You could feel every single frame is so charged with meaning. I guess I should probably get into what this movie is about, which is
first off, how did you discover this movie?
I discovered this through Mega 64. I was listening to their podcast back like a decade ago, and they were talking about strange art films, and the biggest one they were talking about was Holy Mountain, which they talked about it. That it was this movie again. They were mostly making fun of how crazy it was. They're like, oh, this guy shits in a pot and it turns into gold, and they're marching dog carcasses through the streets, and I'm like, oh my god, this sounds kind of insane. So I checked it out, and I really didn't know what to make of it. It was I sort of bounced off it the first time, but after watching a couple scenes again, I was like, this might be a movie I have to look at again.
See, because I kind of had the same reaction, because I first heard about this, I think, through Your Movie Sucks, because this is his favorite movie of all time, and I mean, I probably would have heard about it otherwise, just because I'm in a lot of film discussion things, and this gets brought up a lot.
Yeah.
And when I first saw it, I didn't really know what to make of it, but afterward, I watched Alejandro Jodorowsky's movie that he made before this, which is called El Topo.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Yeah, and so that was when I was like, okay, I'm starting to understand and get into this style and this voice, and it's starting to like resonate with me a little bit more. So that kind of made me intrigued to go back and see The Holy Mountain for the second time, and I finally did with this recommendation. So
yeah. So in case you didn't get a chance to see the film, the film is about it's about a lot of things, but on a base level, it's about the alchemist, and a group of strange and immoral people, one of which is like a Christ figure, like he's supposed to be Jesus.
One is a Christ figure, and the other are based off of astrology.
Yes,
like the planets.
The planets. Basically, when we come into the movie, we come in. Our main character that we follow at the very beginning is the thief, who is this Christ figure, someone who's bears the image of Jesus. And again, this is a crazy movie to watch right around Christmas time.
I watched it Christmas Day because I was like, okay, I'm not going to watch a Christmas movie. I'm going to watch a Jesus movie, though.
Yeah, so, exactly.
And I kept calling him the Fool because that's the tarot card that represents him. But when was he called the Thief?
He was called the Thief. There's the scene where they're dropping all the money into the fire pit, okay. And the alchemist calls him Thief. And I think that's what he's credited as in the credits as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I called him the Fool, like in my notes and everything. So
yeah, the Fool, the Thief.
Yeah, we picked 2 movies in a row, this and Ritual, where the characters have no names, so we have to we have to improvise.
Yeah, exactly. Except for, I guess, all of the planetary people who have names, but they're all these like really short, one-syllable Invader Zim names.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically we follow him. He's basically just sort of wandering through this city, this opening segment is really what pulls you in when you're following the Fool or the Thief or Jesus or whatever you want to call him. He's found with the very first thing you see is he's laying on the ground, cut with flies covering his face, and within 3 seconds of meeting him, he immediately pisses his pants. And it's such a jarring way. It sort of reminded me of Piss Christ. Do you know Piss Christ? It immediately evoked images of that. Piss Christ is a photo that was taken, I believe, by Andres Serrano. It's a photo of a crucifix submerged in urine, and it's just one of its design is to be evocative and offensive, and really, like, it's supposed to make you upset. If it makes you upset, it's doing its job. And that's the first initial idea I get from this movie, because the opening scene is just full of these images that like, if they were in any other situation, they would be like haunting and horrifying, and they are still sometimes, but the sheer amount of fucked up shit you see in like the first 20 minutes of this movie, it's impossible to take seriously. It's almost like it's a really bite. It's like whole. It's like the
Well, I would
most
say that,
intense satire you could possibly
yeah,
imagine.
exactly. It's not that I don't take it seriously on some level. It's just that it's done in a satirical
Yeah,
tone.
exactly.
So where I'm like, there is contrast between the two tones, that being the funny nature of this and the what it's saying on a deeper level.
Exactly. Yeah. There's definitely there's stuff that you could miss on the first watch. Like I watched the opening of this movie multiple times while I was trying to find a good place to watch this movie. And a couple things I noticed is all the people who are being there's lots of people being executed in the streets. And that is played fairly straight, but meanwhile everyone else is there's this whole gaggle of tourists that are going around taking photos of the dead, executed people. It's an incredibly biting satire of the culture at the time, but it really I figured it might be a little dated. It really isn't. All of these things that happen in the first act of this movie before we meet the alchemist is very representative of what our culture is, on a satirical level, of course. Like, it's not exactly like this, but it still is pointing a finger at something that's still happening, like in this day and age.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, it goes into issues like religion and war and sexuality and consumerism,
Yep.
and all these things that are arguably even more prevalent with the internet nowadays and stuff like that, where everybody's getting into arguments with everybody else about these type of things. And what really interested me about this movie is that I do, as you probably know, I like movies that are about kind of religious discussion, or like shows and things like that. Not necessarily that they're anti-religious or pro-religious,
Yeah.
but I like the analysis of it. And the way that this, like, would you consider this to be an anti-religious movie?
Not even a little bit. I think that it is. I think that this movie is very religious and very spiritual, but I think that it very much is criticizing the consumerism and the corporate idea
Yeah.
of religion in society.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the way that I'm thinking about it too, because this, to me, it's not a criticism of, oh, you're a Christian, or oh, you follow astrology or even tarot cards or anything. It's a criticism of, hey, I'm going to use this person who looks like Jesus and make these giant wax figures and sell them all around the land to all these different people.
Exactly.
It's like, this is like a criticism of people who use the marketability of religion to make money off of this thing. It's like the whole George Carlin skit where it's like, he loves you and he needs money. It's that type of thing, where it's about it's about how people use religion in unethical ways, and what happens when you really strip all the unethical elements of it, and you're actually looking for enlightenment. You're looking for the next step in life. You're looking for what actual spirituality is, as opposed to having a Jesus bobblehead in your cart or something like that. It's a very interesting take on it, and I really like the discussion that it creates. And I think this is like something that we've all considered at certain points, of like, what is the true faith, the true religion. And this movie certainly doesn't give you an answer. What it is saying, it's kind of like, well, you look through the bullshit of like the outer rims of how everything's being advertised towards you. Well, for example, when I was going through the US a little while ago, on every single billboard there was like advertisements for Jesus, like, come to our church, go
See, that's crazy.
get down with Jesus and stuff like that. What this movie is criticizing is that type of thing, where it's, put Jesus on a billboard, get money from these people, try to twist their arm and do things like that. Not to say that preaching your religion or whatever is necessarily arm twisting
No,
or
there's
being an indoctrination, but there's a difference between doing that in a way where it's
like tasteful.
Tasteful, yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Doing it in a way where it was tasteful, doing it in a way where you're actually trying to intrigue people and get your message out there, and doing it in a way where it's, we need more money for our church. So
yeah,
there's a very big difference between those two things, which I think is the main focus of this movie. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily pro-religious or anti-religious, or I don't even know what Jodorowsky's true religious beliefs are, or if he has definitive religious beliefs, because it seems like he's delved into a lot of different types of theology and types of spirituality just based on this movie, because it does cover things like astronomy and tarot cards and these other beliefs that people go through. But it is this thing also where it also criticizes that. It criticizes consumerism when it comes to sexuality, how they use sex to sell things.
Yeah.
It criticizes how people get indoctrinated for war, how they use different toys for children to make them influence about these things. Like, it's not just about the religious discussion. It starts off with the religious discussion, and then it expands into the wider issue of all these different parts of our society and how consumerism is being used in those ways too. And it doesn't even, at the end of the movie, it points the camera on itself, where it reveals it's entirely, they're aware that they're in a movie. And that was this thing where, he's even saying that movies do that. And, that's true too. Like, art does that every single thing that we're accustomed to and that we're dealing with, it does influence our mindset in certain ways, whether that be art, whether that be religion, whether that be, sexuality, toys, anything like that, from beginning to end. And this movie is kind of saying it's not really even above that stuff, because obviously this movie has a message. It's trying to make you think. And you could say that it's being indoctrination. You could say that it's being pretentious and it's up its own ass because it feels like it has this message that it needs to get out there to people. But that is just kind of the world we live in, where we all kind of have a message that we're trying to, like this. It's also true of this podcast that we're doing.
Yeah.
We're having these discussions. We have a message that we're trying to get out into the world. Whether or not it reaches a wide audience or a small audience, it doesn't matter, because we're still have this agenda that we're putting out. It doesn't even necessarily need to be malicious or conscious, but we're all doing that in our own way. And I really like the way the ending, in my opinion, really wraps this up and kind of makes the point hit home so much harder. And but anyway, I'm kind of bouncing all around, so I'll let you have another say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really agree with you on that. In terms of how the world is presented, it's very much one where like religion is used mostly as an excuse. It sort of points the camera at religion in very specific ways. So at the beginning of the movie, when we're following the thief, and his little guy who has no arms, no legs, going through the city, what you see is how religion is presented, again, in a satirical way, in the world that they live in. And it's a commodity in that sense. We see that everybody is devoid of morals, and is basically just trying to live their lives in the most excess that they can within their means. So either it's die or enjoy yourself in the filth. It's you're being executed in the street, or you're I don't like you're wallowing in the filth of immorality. And you could say whatever you want about the concept of immorality and what is immoral. This movie definitely is very on the nose with its message on immorality. And Christ and I guess in the specific, I guess to be less specific, religion is a distraction from that. You know, it's you don't have to feel bad because you believe in God and Christ, and He is all you need to buy into to save your soul and live as immaculately as you want, as long as you're on our side. And what we see is him sort of buy into that. There's the scene where he joins the weird lizards and toads fight, which was really incredibly well shot, I'd say. Like, despite the frogs and or I guess they're toads and lizards not really doing a whole lot, the way that it's shot implies a whole lot. But through that whole thing, he did that for what exactly, I guess, is the biggest question. Is he does this shortly after he's paid money to film a woman being assaulted by an army person at one of these executions.
Yeah, and I think that another big theme of this movie is just the way that humans use animals in their own, and you know, again, that has so much more relevancy now with global warming and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly. And once he's sort of enamored with that idea, he meets these like, they're dressed as like Roman centurions, and they get him so drunk that, again, they get him so drunk that he passes out, and they make casts of his body to sell his image. And I think, honestly, one of the best shots of this movie is when he wakes up after they make all those casts, because basically what you see is they make the cast, and then you see them sleeping and him sleeping, and he wakes up, and you can see already in the shot that there's a couple of these wax statues, but as it pans out, it's this slow pan, and there must be like 200 Jesus statues in this warehouse.
I'd say more than that.
Oh, it's like, again, it's so many of them. It's overwhelming, and his response is really over the top at first, but as it zooms out, you feel him. It's like, imagine, like, again, this movie delves into the absurdist, so it's kind of hard to be like, oh, imagine if you were in that situation. But imagine if you were in that situation, you woke up to 500 wax copies of yourself surrounding you. That's a horrifying scene.
Yeah, that's very true, and that is a big thing with the cinematography in this movie. A lot of those shots is like, it'll be a close-up of something, and then it'll zoom out, or just cut to a different wider shot, and it'll show you the entire environment around them, and how crazy that is, which I really like. And speaking of Imagine, and that's a bad pun, but this movie was acclaimed and produced by John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
Yes.
And I believe George Harrison also had involvement. And it was produced by the manager of the Beatles, Alan Klein, and John Lennon and George Harrison were big
fans of
advocates of it, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono put up production money, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And you can definitely see that this is the type of thing that would be in the Beatles' music when they're talking about, or in the song Imagine, even when he's talking about all these different things, like imagine there's no heaven, imagine this, imagine that. And this is very much in the style of kind of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where they're delving into those things. And even actually the whole thing with drugs, and this movie's commentary on drugs, how that's used as both escapism and a spiritual awakening tool, which is something that is very interesting, that now in our current day and age, when drugs are becoming more accessible, and you know, there's good reasons for it, there's good reasons against it, depending on the type of drug. I mean, I don't think too many people argue that marijuana needs to not be legalized anymore, at least in Canada and in a lot of parts of the States. But in terms of like the trippier psychedelic stuff like LSD, which this movie delves into, and this would be an insane watch on LSD or
Yeah.
a hallucinogenic drug like that, because not only is it just trippy and weird and hilarious and amazing, but it's also kind of like peering into your soul if you're on one of those type of drugs, and really asking you, okay, what is the significance of what you're doing? What is the significance of the mind altering substance? Are you just going on a trip? Are you using it to delve deeper into yourself?
Exactly.
And again, it's not even, I would say, pro or anti drug. It's not even pro or anti, in the same way that it's not pro or anti religion. I mean, I believe Jodorowsky probably has his own thoughts on those type of things, but I think that he's getting into the bigger picture here of what is this all actually, in a society where religion exists, drug exists, indoctrination exists. How do we use those things to find actual enlightenment and actual truth and morality and things like that? So, and that is kind of my take on it. It's kind of this thing where it's like the question of whether or not religion, for example, is good or bad is kind of irrelevant, because we live in a society of religion, where there's religion everywhere. So, if it's good or bad, that's not really going to change things. It exists, so we need to find the good or bad within it. And the same thing exists with all these other topics that it brings up. So, I know I'm rambling and I'm going on a lot of these tangents, but that's what this movie does. Is it brings up these issues and it presents them in a way that really makes me think about them. And it, on top of it just being a very artistically insane movie in its own right, it also makes me think about all these different topics and very deeply, which is something that I appreciate. I don't know if I've seen a movie that's this loaded with commentary on these different topics.
It's got a lot to say, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Even movies that are, directly about not all of these topics, but just one of these topics. This movie has more to say about one of these topics, as well as saying everything about all these other topics, more than a lot of movies that are just based on one of these subjects. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, for real. And to go off on the subject of like LSD and psychedelics, this was apparently part of the whole production of this film. Jodorowsky, there was a lot that he did to prepare for the filming of this movie. LSD was one of the things that he regularly partaked in. It was under the guidance of, I believe, Oscar Ichazo from the Arica Institute.
If he was associated with the Beatles, I mean,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he was definitely going with that. The death rebirth scene. Mushrooms were passed out to the actors to enhance their performance. Drugs were very, very much a whole part of it, and I think not in a sense of just getting a good getting a good take or anything. It was very much almost a spiritual experience filming this movie.
Yeah. Which you can really tell is that, like, the people in this movie are, they're not shallow people. They're actually thinking about the subjects of this movie.
Exactly.
Like, I don't think anybody came to the Holy Mountain for the paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
If they did, then holy shit, they were probably they were undressed, naked. They were fucking on drugs. This this could have been such an embarrassment to every single person involved, and had this gone wrong, including Jodorowsky, probably especially.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you need to handle these subjects with such care. Like, I know I read that there was one scene, and this was probably one of the most upsetting things about this movie, is there, again, near the end of the first act, there's the scene with like a whole gaggle of prostitutes and a chimpanzee that is never explained. The chimpanzee that hangs out with the prostitutes, and we follow one of these prostitutes for along the movie. She's following this whole group because she's in love with the thief, but one of these prostitutes is clearly like 10 years old, and wearing like a mesh shirt, and it's really really upsetting to look at.
Yeah.
It's like, and apparently there was another scene with a mostly naked girl that was cut from the movie in the theatrical release, I believe, because the parents were like, "No, you're not putting my naked child on up on screens everywhere," and which makes sense because
Yeah.
like you need to know when to pull that and when to not, because again, these are some really sensitive subjects that this movie takes on. Like we're talking. Um, yeah, we're talking like war. We're talking capitalism, sexuality,
We talk about
everything.
sex, baby. We
Yeah.
talk about you and me. I wanted to say that before I said sexuality, but whatever.
But yeah, it's yeah. The weapons manufacturers are in the. To talk about the military industrial complex. It really pulls no punches. Um, and while it's really psychedelic going in, it doesn't go. It really just feels like a warm up until when he actually goes to meet the alchemist in the tower, because everything is fairly grounded in reality up until that point. You know, there's a lot of weird stuff well, grounded in reality in the fact that everything is happening in like a regular city. Like there's buildings and roads and stuff. And as soon as he enters that tower, it feels like sort of like Alice through the looking glass, like arriving in a whole different world. Like this tower that he ascends to meet the alchemist is a fairly it's a tall tower, but it's not very large, like it's not very wide. But as soon as he goes in, it's this whole world of like color and oddities, and it really does feel like he stepped into another world once he meets him, which is definitely on purpose, because this is the big moment where he begins his path to enlightenment, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And there is. I do like all three parts of the movie because there's three parts of the movie. There's him going around the city, then there's him up in the tower where it goes into the stories of all the
Planets.
planet people, and then there's them actually searching for the holy mountain in the third act. And they all have these kind of interesting takes on them. With the first act is kind of this guy just interacting with the society and seeing all the effects of the society and the world of the consumerism and greed around him. And then when he goes up into the tower and he meets the alchemist, and he's starting to learn all these different backstories about why the world that they live in is the way that it is, and the people who contribute to it, and how they can actually throw away their material possessions, like that scene where they're all throwing their money into a big fire and begin their journey. And then the third act is the journey to enlightenment, to the holy mountain, and the actual spiritual growth that they may or may not have undertaken. The movie doesn't really make it too clear what their internal experiences are it does in terms of the challenges they face, but at the end of it, I'm still not entirely sure what they've learned. But I feel like there is something that they did learn, but it is this thing where it's very much open to interpretation what happens to them after they leave the movie set and what happens to him when he goes back to the city. Which one of them reached enlightenment? Did they reach enlightenment? Is there such thing as enlightenment? Or is it just kind of like they've hit this point where they just have to keep going? Yeah, this is one of those movies I'd say. I'm trying to think, is there another movie that's as dense and as just filled with discussion as this one is? Maybe Blade Runner?
Maybe, but even then, like this one takes the that substance and makes it's just so thick and rich with it.
Yeah.
Blade Runner still like at its forefront is trying to tell a story. I think at this point this movie sort of lets storytelling fall by the wayside to sort of make you fall into it like an LSD trip, really.
Yeah, this is And you could maybe argue that with Blade Runner in a certain sense, where it's very talky and philosophical. There is definitely, I'd say that there's an act structure to this, and there's an act structure to Blade Runner,
Yeah.
if you really break it down. But there is this kind of thing where they're both talking about these really deep philosophical themes, and they're really not for the it's kind of strange to think that Blade Runner has kind of reached this pop culture mythos because it seems like something that's I don't want to say it's too smart for most people because that would be pretentious, but I will say that it does pack a lot more substance and social commentary than what you would expect out of like, you know, an 80s movie with Harrison Ford or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's kind of I'm surprised it didn't fall into the category that The Holy Mountain did, where The Holy Mountain is not really I think I almost said Mountain, but The Holy Mountain is not really something that I hear outside of film discussion, like the people who are really into like film groups and stuff like that. I don't really see it reach a wider audience than that. And
for good reason. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Oh no, it is. And that's the thing too. It's like when I watched Blade Runner the first time, didn't really like it. Thought it was boring.
It took me about 4 times, honestly.
Yeah, and then the same thing with this. Not that I found it boring on the first time, but I found it way too out there and too artsy. And, you know, this is not the type of movie where you watch it once. Maybe if you're familiar with some of Alejandro Jodorowsky's other movies, then maybe this would kind of resonate with you a little bit. But because that's how I came around to it, by watching El Topo, which is a really good movie. I don't think it's as good as this from my memory. But there is just this thing where this is a lot. Like, to say that I wouldn't blame someone for not liking this.
Oh yeah, no, it's again, it's definitely an acquired taste. I don't think that your average moviegoer is going to go to this movie and be like, "Oh, well, that was fun."
Yeah,
like,
that was a good time had by all.
Good time was had by all, yeah. Like, it's like, oh, we had a lot of fun. Jesus was there. It was a good Christian movie.
But at the same time, I do understand why people like YMS, or why other people would consider this to be the greatest movie ever made, because there is just so much that's in here, and it's so dense and packed and full of commentary and full of personality too. Like, it's not just this thing where it's someone preaching all these ideas at you. It is a satire, and it is doing this with, like, you know, tongue-in-cheek sort of tone through it, a lot of it, and a lot of it is very funny. I was laughing quite a bit throughout the movie, but it is also a deconstruction of a lot of these different ideas, and it's really, I think this is brilliant. Like, this, after watching it the second time, this is gonna probably be close to one of my favorite movies of all time. I would say, like, I would put it in, I don't know if I would rank it yet, but probably after a few other more watchings, it would go just the same way that Blade Runner did, by watching it like 3, 4, 5 times. You know, that's when I really started to get into what it was saying and the ideas it was presenting. And the same thing with, like, even Hausu.
Yeah, exactly.
The Obayashi movie. When I watched that, I was like, okay, that was a fun, weird Japanese movie. And I didn't think of it too deeply, but then I started thinking about all the different elements of it. And this is one where I guess you could say Synecdoche, New York is kind of like that too. I was a big Charlie Kaufman fan before I saw that, so I did kind of enjoy that right away. But I know a lot of people that wouldn't. And so this is just one of those movies where it is kind of a forever movie. This is a movie that, you know, I'll be watching years from now and getting different things out of it that I wasn't getting even on this viewing, on the first viewing, or on my 10th viewing. Like, it was...
Yeah, exactly. And I want to say again that this... I didn't remember how funny this movie was. Like, the satire is all hilarious. Specifically, again, the opening act of this movie is a little hardcore. Like I don't know if anyone would think, like, it's still pretty funny, but I don't think anyone would consider it as funny as the middle act. The middle act is where we are being introduced to all of these companions that are going to come with us on our quest to find the Holy Mountain, and they're all different. Different people who represent different industries in the world, which again just goes to show how anti-capitalist this is. But I mean, maybe not even anti-capitalist.
I think it's just anti-government.
Yeah, anti-government in general. Yeah, but it's strange. It's even in the satire, like in the narrative, is definitely criticizing these people, but morally, these people are not being judged at all. These are like our protagonists. It's like a cosmetics manufacturer who makes fake faces to make you not to tell you that you don't need your own personal identity. It can just be whatever you want, and that which strips the self. There's
police force where they cut off their testicles as part of the initiation.
Yes, the testicle harvesting police force. There's the one of the strangest ones was the toy manufacturer who makes war toys and is actually controlling the perception of the public towards certain countries.
Yeah. There was the sex machine.
The sex machine.
Where they had to be pleasured by this giant pole, and whoever pleasured them the best would.
That was wild. What an insane, like, it goes really hard, and it's really funny, especially if you've partaken in some sort of drugs before this. It is a very enjoyable watch. The second half of this movie is hilarious.
Actually, the first 2 times I've watched this movie, I've been sober.
Yeah,
but I am gonna watch it probably under the influence of something and see what my experience of it is.
Yeah, I would highly fucking recommend it. It is it makes the disturbing stuff more disturbing. It makes the funny stuff funnier, and it makes the third act, which is probably the most enlightening and most open part of the movie. Yeah. It makes it way much more impactful. Probably but I would say that this movie has just such range to be so funny, but at the same time, even while it's being funny, sort of showing you a really disturbing vision of society and where it's going.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing with his like dwarf friend that has no like hands or feet. There's this disturbing element to that, but at the same time, the guy is enjoying his time with each other, and they're good friends. Like, he doesn't, there's no prejudice against him in that regard, nor is there this prejudice against prostitutes or even these people on these high levels who are actually really fucking up society. The movie doesn't say that they're beyond enlightenment or they're beyond help, because It's kind of saying that all these different subsets of society, whether it's the people in the high ups or the people on the ground, are fucked up in their own way. And and I think that that's actually kind of true. Like, we're all fucked up in our own ways.
Yeah.
And we can cast blame or anything, but it's these people who are actually looking for enlightenment and trying to get better that are, it doesn't matter how rich or poor you are, that's something that you can do. And with something like, Alejandro Jodorowsky is playing the alchemist in this movie. I don't think we've brought that up yet. And this isn't a case where, in a lot of movies where a director will cast himself in a role and it just kind of seems like a bit role or like kind of random or, just because they wanted to do it for whatever, like, Tarantino in Pulp Fiction, I don't think there's a deeper meaning to why he cast himself in that. I think he just kind of wanted to be in the movie. But with this, like, it absolutely, there's a reason why Jodorowsky cast himself in this, because he is the writer, director, editor. I think he was part of the composition. He had all these, he had his hands in pretty much every different part of this movie. And, he is kind of controlling the environment and controlling how everything plays out. So for him to play the alchemist and be in that and actually give direction to people while he's actually giving direction to people on the set. It's a great meta kind of commentary on his role in this and what he's doing. And again, it's also pointing out, his own, I wouldn't say hypocrisy, but his own awareness in what he's doing and his contribution to this society. Because, obviously, I've brought up before that he made this movie for a reason, to get like a point across. And, it's showing him as kind of the leader in this production on screen, which is translating to him, bringing all these ideas. And, he's in the same way that all these people who are representing these different parts of society, of war, religion and stuff like that, and what their image means, and, the people giving advice to the president, the guy who said that they should go into like gas chambers to like wipe out the population, like those type of things. It's like, we all have our own role to play in that, and Jodorowsky is fully aware of what his role is in making this piece of art.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, there's a lot to be said about his choice to cast himself as the alchemist. Is the alchemist, again, when we first meet him, he is this person who is, I suppose, gifting gold to this city, for reasons that we don't quite understand or know. And then when we meet him, we see that he is this person who could make that from nothing. So Jodorowsky takes this, or I guess the alchemist takes the literal excrement from the thief and boils it down to its base chemicals and combines them in a certain way that turns it into a solid chunk of gold, which is equal to what I guess I don't think he was thinking of it in this specific way. I don't think, just seeing how he tells his story, but it's almost an analogy for the movie itself. Is, he takes all of these horrible things, these visions of terror and a future yet to come, and he sort of molds them in a way that turns it into this movie about, I guess, the way that the human spirit can become enlightened, and it's really just this indomitable thing that can break through the ideas that society presents to us, I guess. Yeah. So it's really interesting that he made that choice, because it works out in the end.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of the meta stuff, like the whole thing with them referencing they're in a movie at the end, you gotta remember, this was 1973. This was not a common practice in film around this time. I mean, obviously being meta is, so, commonplace now, usually just for like cheap jokes, like, Rick and Morty, Ryan Reynolds comedy. But like, it's just this whole thing where the way that it's done in this movie is, there's a reason to it. Like, even if it was done nowadays, this would be a great meta ending to the movie, even in the oversaturated meta-ness of our current society, because it's actually a commentary on what it's doing of, the movie itself and the role that the movie is playing in the larger scheme of society, and the role that we're all playing in the larger scheme of society. And this was something where it was pretty, like, this probably isn't the first movie to do something like this. Maybe it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But regardless of first or whatever, this is probably one of the best uses of that type of meta commentary that I've seen. And, whether, and maybe that even works better now, we're in like a world where it is, the meta humor is a lot more plentiful, and fourth wall breaks are a lot more, common, than we think. I mean, I guess I don't know when Mel Brooks started making movies. That might have been like the first type of when it started getting popular, like in the 70s with like stuff like Blazing Saddles and stuff like that. But even this it's a little bit different than something like that. Like it's different than Rick Moranis looking at the camera and saying like, everybody got that, which is hilarious. But this is like there's a deeper kind of message to what this movie's saying with its use of its meta commentary.
Yeah, meta jokes are not a new thing at all.
Yeah.
I think that there's me and you saw Sonic 3 recently, and there's a very overt meta joke in that one. And it's like this stuff has been around for forever. But
to be honest, I like Sonic 3. That joke kind of made me groan a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's we live in this sort of era where like these meta jokes are seen as like almost like shortcuts, like, oh, we're doing the thing, look at us, we're doing that thing, the thing that we said we were gonna do, we're doing it. And it's like, it is so much harder to be meta serious, like that's exactly
True.
what this is. It is not like, hey, we're in a movie, that wasn't that a crazy movie I made, remember when he pooped in that jar? Like, no, it uses the idea of being a film made by human beings as a piece of art for commodification, to subvert your idea of what is being presented to you. Because you just watched a full 2-hour movie about being enlightened and surpassing the ideas in society that are holding humanity down. And at the end of the movie, the director calls cut, says to zoom out, and says, you've been watching a movie this whole time. Go outside. Like go outside. The world is waiting for you.
Yeah.
Like the world and everything that's beautiful in it is right there.
Yeah, exactly. The characters are leaving the theater in the same way that, the audience is leaving the movie, or the characters are leaving the movie in the same way that the audience is leaving the theater. And even like, I couldn't imagine doing a double feature with this movie, because like if I watch something after this movie, it feels like it would be antithetical to the point of what it's saying.
Exactly. So. Like, it's you just the movie says closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Like,
yeah,
I've never seen a movie do that. Like, just it's like, except for The Chin or the Tick. The Chin.
The
What's
Chin.
The Chin?
Are you thinking the Crimson Chin?
I was thinking of the Crimson Chin. Except for the Tick. The Tick did do that.
Go outside. Read a book.
Read a book. Yeah. Alejandro Jodorowsky and the Tick are on the same wavelength in terms of meta commentary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can't believe we brought up the Tick in a discussion of the Holy Mountain. But that's just what this movie does. It gets you into like all these different mindsets of what we're doing, and it's actually kind of funny. Like, I'm currently writing a video on a TV show for OK Fine Be That Way, which I'll reveal what that is at the end of this episode.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
And it is a whole thing about like, there's a good way to do meta humor and meta commentary and meta drama even. And I think we're just so used to it being done the lazy route, the obvious route, the on the nose route. Not to say that this movie is subtle in what it's doing, because it's not.
It's probably as in your face as it can be.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also it's clever though. Everything this movie. This is not a subtle movie at all, but it is a very smart movie. And there's value to being subtle and having these different interpretations to your things, and there's value to being on the nose. And this movie kind of finds value in both of those things. It's very varied, the way that it tells its story and the way that it presents its characters and everything like that. Like, this is a even just stripping away all the commentary of the movie, this is a very entertaining watch for me. And it gets better on repeat watches. The experience of just watching it itself it's fun, it's also disturbing, and you know, I say stripping away the commentary and stuff like that, but I mean, you can't really do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm just saying that in addition to all these different things, it makes me think about. I really like this movie. It's a really entertaining time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I also think that the other thing to mention is the music in this movie is really interesting in that a lot of the instrumentality of it, or a lot of how things like sound very like, it's not nearly as polished as like a normal movie score would be. A lot of like there'll be like off key notes in like the score and stuff, and it doesn't really take you out of it though. It sort of makes it
Not at
feel
all.
like raw and uncompromising in how it wants to show itself off, and that's how everything is. That's probably the best way I would describe this movie, is uncompromising. Like you talk about movies with like big studio budgets. The first thing that I think of is that just from the top of my head is the second Doctor Strange movie that was directed by Sam Raimi was originally going to be like a horror movie, like its own crazy thing. And because of course it's a superhero movie and it's a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it was eventually sanded down and made to fit in that square peg of a Marvel movie. But then you have this movie where much of the production money was provided by artistics who understand this creative process, and again, not much was compromised. I can't imagine. I can only imagine that barely any changes were made, unless it was something that needed to be done, like the scene I told you about earlier. It's like Jodorowsky had a vision and he presented it, and then once that vision was presented, there was there was no studio to help him censor the image that he was trying to give off, and which is even better for this movie, because this movie is about being brutally honest about what is right, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's a thing where and yeah, you do see that a lot more in things nowadays. I actually kind of enjoyed the Doctor Strange sequel. I definitely liked it more than the first Doctor Strange because it felt like a movie that was, or a Marvel movie that was made by a director with a vision,
Yeah.
even with the fact that it was definitely a compromised vision because it was trying to be a Marvel movie. Like, the worst parts of that movie, in my opinion, were the parts that were trying to be a Marvel movie, and
Yeah.
the best parts of that movie were the parts where it was trying to be a Sam Raimi horror movie. And with this, it doesn't feel like there is this type of I mean, it's not like a tiny budget. It was like, let's see,
I think it was under $1 million.
yeah, it was 750,000, which is, in 1973 money, not nothing for sure.
Yeah.
But it was clearly a movie that knew that it was not going to get a wide distributor, at least right away. This was something where I'm pretty sure they knew this was a over time type of thing. People are going to discover this. And I think that's probably why, like, they make references to war and stuff, but, the Vietnam War was going on around this time, and I'm pretty sure that they didn't reference that for a reason, because they wanted it to be evergreen, because
Yeah.
war has not gone away.
Exactly. Yeah, like you could almost see that as like censoring itself. Like, oh, you don't want to talk about the war, but like, there's always going to be war. Like anytime you watch this movie, whatever war is happening at this time is probably what this is about. You know, it's holding a mirror up, like in the scene after Jesus shits gold. Like they're holding the mirror up to us and our society, and it's scary, so we smash that mirror. You know, like it's horror. It's showing all the worst parts of society, but it's also showing all the parts of society that can be changed. Like it's showing a lot of distressing things. I would never say that this movie has a bleak outlook for the
Yeah,
future.
I would agree with that. Like, it's not a oh, we're totally fucked type of movie. It's like a thing where we live in a fucked up society, but there is ways to circumvent that and go beyond that, which is something that I truly believe in too. It's this
Yeah,
whole thing where there's a lot of fucked up shit that's going on in my life right now. There's
yeah,
a lot of fucked up shit going on in Nathan's life too, I bet, and a lot of at anybody
all the
else's
time.
life. So it is this thing where all these different but it's just about keeping your integrity, not only keeping your integrity and remembering who you are, but removing the values of the materialism and stuff like that. And what does it all mean? I mean, you could say that, you know, Nathan and I, we're surrounded by video games and movies and shit like that, like different art that speaks to us. And it is this kind of thing where it's not just a distraction for me. I don't know how you feel, but there is, deeper meanings and stuff that we can get out of that. And it's not like my whole life revolves around that. It's just a tool that I use to go out. It's, I sometimes used to say that, art is my religion, and I think that this is a movie where it understands what I mean by that.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I know that there's definitely art I've consumed that feels like that commodification, like my wax Christ.
Yeah.
Right? Like things that are just to distract me from the bad in my life, bad that I might have caused for myself. Bad that I have put out into the world. I'm sure that's possible. I just feel like this understands that. This movie understands that it itself is an art commodification, but it is not going to be a distraction. It's going to be something that's going to shape your opinion on life and the society around you.
Yeah.
It's not trying to just jingle keys in front of you like most other less fleshed out ideas. It doesn't have an answer, but it tries to push you in that direction. And again, that's the thing is that the wax Christs of the world are there to distract you, while the more substantive pieces of art that are going to change your life, those are the holy mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think you can say a lot about this movie, and I bet I'll say another whole thing if I watch it again. I think that this movie is about almost to me it is about the commodification of religion and therefore art, because they're one and the same. That's why churches are full of stained glass art of different biblical figures. That's why we talk about that's why so many of these places of worship are so beautiful, is because beauty is beauty and art go hand in hand with enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even you look at a lot of the famous, art things like the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
Like, that's a religious thing. You could say it's used as commodification. You could say that it's used to advertise religion, but it is a beautiful piece of art. And, it's not necessarily saying that there's anything wrong with getting your message out through art, but you do have to kind of acknowledge that you're in this system and you're in this kind of indoctrination a little bit. I mean, it's not like you're saying that this is how people need to feel or anything. You could be like David Lynch, where he won't tell you what the actual meaning behind any of his movies are, but you're still trying to get a reaction out of people. You're still trying to make people think, and there's not necessarily even anything wrong with that, but it is this kind of self-awareness that is good to have whenever you're going into any endeavor, whether it be politics, which is another huge thing in this movie, or toy manufacturing, or whatever you're doing, sexuality even.
Yeah.
It's not, this is a movie where it's certainly not saying that there's anything wrong with being overtly sexual, because this movie is overtly like the fucking poster of the movie that I'm looking at right now in Wikipedia. Has two people's tits hanging out, but it is this, yeah, it is just part of this is just, it touches on all these different parts of life, much like, Love Exposure, which we reviewed last year,
Yeah.
which is about perversion and love and all these different things. This is another very dense movie where it brings up all these things, and while at the same time, much like Love Exposure being a very, very funny and very entertaining watch that you can appreciate on all these different levels, and I will continue to appreciate on all these different levels, because that won't be the last time I watch Love Exposure. This won't be the last time I watch The Holy Mountain. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is it knows that these pieces of art are symbolic of belief and enlightenment. But it knows that enlightenment doesn't come from that art. It comes from within. It comes from whatever you are feeling.
Yeah.
That's why at the end of the movie, it presents itself like the movie is over. What you've just watched is a film. The emotions you feel are real. What it made you feel was real. Go to reality and use that to live your life.
I exist as a part of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, fucking Seaman. But
Exactly.
that's actually a great example of Seaman being this weird virtual pet game that if you play it, there is actually like philosophical discussions that you can have with this weird fish thing.
Yeah.
And, it uses this bizarre presentation to actually make you think and feel different things. And as fucking tedious and horrible as Seaman is in a lot of ways, it is worth the overall experience. And, that's something that, you could make cases about literature. You could make cases about, I don't know, you could make a fucking case about a sports game.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
watching a hockey game or something, how that, like,
We
gets you on a deep
over the
level.
holidays, me, you, Avery, and Avery's sister played a game of Mario Party 3 that I felt like was as close to enlightenment. How much fun we had doing it.
Yeah.
It was one of the best games of Mario Party I ever played, and I'm still thinking about it because it was just this moment of happiness that where like if you like this it would be a stretch to call this game a piece of art. I think someone would look at me sideways if I called Mario Party 3 for the Nintendo 64 a piece of
Maybe
art.
not nowadays. Like the
Maybe not, yeah. But like everything is art. Freddy Got Fingered is art. Fucking
True, it is.
it is. Like anything is art. This movie makes me view art in a different way. And I think that is the best thing I could say about it.
Yeah. Well, it makes me view all these different things. Like maybe not that I didn't have like these core beliefs about art or religion or sexuality before this, but this movie is it touches on all these things in ways that I don't know if I've seen another movie that does. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. At the same time, I don't know what else I have to say in like this
Yeah.
discussion, but this was a great start to the year. I don't know if we're going to top this one going
Yeah,
into
it's
the
crazy
rest
how
of the year.
we keep doing this where you watch this amazing movie in January. Oh, but yeah, that's Holy Mountain. If you have not seen this movie, please go check it out. It is in a bunch of places that I could not afford, so I found other ways. But please check out the Holy Mountain. I think this is again an important movie to watch if you are interested in I get, as we said, like art and art analysis and film analysis. It's also important to watch if you are um if you feel almost I'm not going to say it's going to save your life or anything, but it's a good, it puts you on the right track of it sort of gives you hope, I guess, in a weird way.
I would say even people that are not even really interested in movies or anything, but they just
Yeah.
like these different philosophical discussions and themes, they check out the Holy Mountain. I mean, I don't know why you would be listening to this podcast if that was the case,
Yeah.
but if you know someone like that, yeah, recommend them that they check out the Holy Mountain. They'll probably
And
really
watch El
enjoy it.
Topo too,
Yeah, exactly.
because I haven't even seen that. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah,
Now.
you should. I need to see other Jodorowsky stuff other than that. I only have seen those two, but I don't think he's made that many movies over the years, but I'm pretty sure that he's still, he's 95 and his last movie was not too long ago, so he's just gonna be making shit till the day he drops dead.
Good for him, because he's killing it.
Yep.
Honestly. Oh, all right. Well, that was Holy Mountain. God.
Mountain.
Yeah, Holy Mountain. Good start to 2025. Yeah.
The Rocky Mountain.
Mountain. So that was the Holy Mountain. Ian, do you have a recommendation for next month's episode?
Well, I said I did earlier, so no, I don't. I was lying, fucker.
Jesus Christ.
No, but...
What happened to all the nice things that we learned from Jodorowsky?
Yeah, okay, but no, I do. So a few years ago on my other channel, Okay Fine Be That Way, I made a video about a French-Canadian series called Série Noire. Did you see that?
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, did you see that video?
I did.
Okay, so I made...
Unless you were asking the viewer, then they can't respond to you.
No, I was asking you.
Okay, I did see it.
So I made two sort of promises in that video, and they were both dependent on whether or not I was going to find English subtitles for it again. One promise was that I was going to do a follow-up review for the show, which I am working on Okay Fine Be That Way right now. Woo! And the second was that I found a movie from 1979 also called Série Noire, which had nothing to do with the show, but it had pretty good ratings and everything. So I said, you know what, as a bonus, maybe I'll do that too. I'll make a review of that. And at the time I was kind of joking, but now I have a movie review podcast where I can do that. So my recommendation for next time from 1979 is Série Noire.
Série Noire.
And if you want to watch the 2014 series too, I can give you a link to that, where to find it, if you want to have any discussion about that too. I mean, we can do that, but that's up to you.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out next month. That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Série Noire. Yeah, check that out. Yeah. So when did that movie come out?
1979. It's
another 70.
It is a French movie, not a French Canadian movie. The show is French Canadian. So.
Yeah. Not French Canadian, just regular French.
Yeah, I have not seen the movie yet, so
damn shame.
But
damn shame.
It does have good ratings and stuff, so you know they'll be taking a shot in the dark, but
yeah,
I think it'll be good.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, that brings us to an end of another episode. Do you have anything to say before we go, Ian?
No, I was gonna make another Mountain joke, but I just kind of finished it off before that, so no.
All right. Well, we began in a fairy tale and we came to life, but is this life reality? No, it is a podcast. See you guys later. Thank you so much for listening.
Adios.
Adios.